I'm Professor Misty Jenkins and I'm an immunotherapist. I have a strong background in immunology and I lead a lab at the Walter and Eliza Hall in Australia, in Melbourne. And I also co-direct the Brain Cancer Centre. So we're really trying to bring immunotherapy approaches to patients with brain cancer, both adults and children. I started my lab 8 years ago with a blank canvas. I literally had to buy pipettes and I started it with an idea. And the idea was that there is an urgency to solving brain cancer. And I'd met all of these parents who'd lost their children and people who'd lost their loved ones, and I hear their stories and their stories are so real. And I knew as an immunologist that I had an opportunity to apply cell therapy to this wicked disease, and so really have set about getting the right team around me, working in this really cross-disciplinary way and collaborating. And now we've created a brain cancer centre. And 8 years on now, we've got several assets we're spinning out and planning our clinical trials. And I couldn't be prouder of what my team has achieved. First of all, I think it's challenging working in a space like brain cancer because these are a cohort of patients who have no other options. So I think, bringing cell therapy to a cohort of patients like this, we're going to see success actually probably in the shorter term, because in fact we're seeing that around the world globally. Looking at the clinical trial outcomes of both adults and kids with brain cancer, there have been incredibly amazing tumour regressions seen. I think brain cancer is actually leading the solid cancer space, particularly for CAR T-cell therapy at the moment. So I'm excited to really bring this technology into Australia. Currently it's not being offered for adults with glioblastoma, and we really want to be able to change that by partnering with Miltenyi. There are so many challenges to translate cell therapies. I think as a scientist, you take your work through, you publish your paper and think, oh, there we go, we're done. But actually entering that valley of death and translating and manufacturing and running small-scale clinical trials is no mean feat, and particularly in a place like Australia, where the funding landscape is much more limited. And then I think really the biggest challenge we're finding at the moment is issues of sponsorship and patient workflow. I mean, in the brain cancer field, we're really looking to administer our CAR T-cell therapies into the brain, intraventricularly, and that has additional challenges. So the unique advantage that the Australian landscape provides is that we're able to run phase 0 clinical trials. So most people are familiar with a phase 1, which is you receive your intervention or your therapy and you compare it to standard of care, whereas phase 0 is receiving the intervention prior to standard of care. But what that means is, in this case, that patients would need to undergo a second surgery. And so that's quite often not possible in places like America because of their insurance schemes and such. And so we can really run these sorts of trials in Australia, which makes it a really attractive place to invest in clinical trials, particularly with the orphan indication and 47% tax back on the dollar. And so I think, there's really an opportunity for us to be really world leading in this space. Point of care manufacturing is the future. We really need, if we really want to democratise access to clinical trials, we have to have a vertically integrated manufacturing system. That's point of care. This is really why we chose to partner with Miltenyi, because I think the Prodigy enables us to really scale these little lab factories around the country easily and tech transfer easily across a large geographical location, and then hopefully internationally. And so this will enable us to really go from when that patient walks in that ED and has a seizure and that MRI diagnoses with a brain cancer, we can immediately be taking blood and starting manufacture in a bespoke, personalised way that's specific for that tumour. I'm really optimistic about the future. There is an urgency to solving brain cancer. I do feel hope for the future that brain cancer patients, that it won't be the death sentence it is now. And I think that cell therapy will be a piece of the puzzle. It won't solve all the problems, but it will be a piece of the puzzle that we can then combine with other therapies to really combat that problem from different angles. And we have to try. We can't talk about 5-year survival rates, for a 3-year-old. We have to talk about cure.